Welcome to day 21 of 30 days of AL programming. And today we are going to look at namespaces in AL.
Hii ni Tech na Msangi ya jishinde.com.
And they are used to organize code. So it applies to Business Central 2023 release wave 2 and later. So they are used to organize code into logical groups and hierarchies, which can prevent naming conflicts that can occur when libraries are combined. And they ensure uniqueness in code names and allow reuse of names in different contexts and provide structure for the code base, making it easier to navigate and understand. So they are used in many programming languages and now they are available in Business Central. So let's just proceed with this short article because an AL file declares a namespace at the beginning of the file and all objects in the code file belong to that namespace. So a given object can only belong to one namespace, but the same namespace can be used for multiple AL files, which means for multiple objects and for multiple modules. There are two compiler rules that apply to namespaces and object naming specifically. So you can only have one object of a kind with the same name in a module. You can only have one object of a kind with the same name in a namespace. So one object of a kind in the same module, one object of a kind in the same namespace. So there is a question here on renaming. So we should not rename namespaces because renaming existing object or member names is a breaking change. Therefore, namespaces can only help with logical structure for existing objects, and any app which is dependent on your app will be broken. So if you rename namespaces and likewise your app will break if any of your dependencies rename their namespaces. So we can break the dependencies if we rename namespaces. So here is the beauty of the syntax. So this is the suggested syntax. Let me say that to declare a namespace in AL, you must use the namespace keyword followed by the name of the namespaces. Okay, so here is the suggestion because this is the requirement. You have to say namespace because the compiler only understands that. Here are some best practices. So a namespace should be globally unique. And then, so it means it should be globally unique in the context of the whole application. The first part of a namespace is tied to the developing organization or an individual. So these are the best practices. So if it is maybe the company, it will be now maybe Microsoft or Jishinde Creative Limited dot or your company name dot or your name if you're now an individual developer, followed by a product name. What product are you building? Are you building maybe a school app? Are you building a Sacco app? And then logical grouping within the product, such as, for example, namespace, it will have maybe big company dot smart product dot some product area. So this supports the two product purposes of namespaces, object name unique and logical grouping of related functionality, to just give us that logical grouping of related functionality. So you should use a stable and non-version specific name for the namespace. Another thing is changing the name of a namespace is a breaking change. So this is not where we define versions. And then the namespace name can be any valid AL identifier, and it can contain dots to indicate a hierarchy of namespaces. So the following, that is an example of namespace, and then we use the using directive to reference other namespaces. So with namespaces now, since we need to use them, we'll be using the using directive to avoid having the fully qualified name that refers to the original object where the product was structurally declared. And so the using to refer to objects in other namespaces, you'll use the using directive, and this is where you have the scope. And a nested, so we can look at nested namespaces, and a nested namespace is a namespace that's declared within another namespace. So in nested namespaces allow for better and more structured naming of objects compared to having to express the full structure in the 30 character object name. So the following syntax shows a nested namespace declaration of my nested namespace within the my namespace separated by a dot. So namespace, my namespace, dot, my nested namespace. So we have a fully qualified name of the namespace. The fully qualified name of the namespace, which is my namespace dot my nested namespace, and to refer to the objects in the my nested namespace, you must then use the fully qualified name or the using directive. So to be able to access objects that are declared in the my nested namespace, include the following statement in your code using my namespace dot my nested namespace. And you can use code actions, that is control dot, to highlight or to append namespaces to your objects. As at this recording, I haven't yet used namespaces in any development because it's pretty not so old, version 23. But here is what the base application, some of the objects of the base application, how have they declared namespaces? And I'll start with, let me look at code unit 12. Wow. So brings in another question. So we are declaring this code unit, but we start with the namespace microsoft.finance.generalledger.posting, and then we have all these using directives. We are using microsoft.bank.accountant, bank.check, ledger, journal, setup, currency, all this. So under the bank module or the bank product, we have the check group here, and the ledger, the finance, you have general ledger. It has another subgroup dot ledger, another subgroup dot journal, and all that. So this is a clear declaration of a nested namespace, because anything here under the ledger has been declared under general ledger and all that. Then we have finance.vat, calculation, human resources, purchases, sales, system.telemetry, and all that. And then we have now the declaration for the permissions that are allowed for this code unit. Okay, it might make, looking at this example, I do have a feeling that maybe to declare a namespace, I don't really need to, I don't know if this is the best way to do it, because if now my code units will be looking like this, then it sort of adds another, I don't know, look and feel. The look and feel is not as good as I'd want it to be, because you can imagine even tracking. I don't know. Yes, of course, you can use the control dot to know where it's located, what you are referring to. But this is, yes, this is a big application, and the posting is dependent on so many other parts of the application. But I'd prefer for our apps, since the first step is usually to divide them into modules, we have them already in modular form. Why not have, maybe if it's your module, your loans module, for instance, so you'll have jcl.loans as the namespace. Nothing more, nothing less. No increase, no decrease. You just have that. And then when you're referring to that app, it becomes much, much easier. Because for the Microsoft side, yeah, we understand, because it's the structure. Actually, if you look at general ledger, will have a lot in terms of the dependencies. General ledger itself, this namespace will be really having a lot. So having general ledger as the only namespace could not be the best way of doing it. So another one here is the report. So at least the trial balance is not dependent on so many namespaces. It's only microsoft.finance.generalledger.account, and the system.utilities. And yeah, similar things here, and the fixed assets as well. So the fixed asset table is dependent on this as well. System.telemetry, .sales, .purchase, .vendor, .foundation, .number series, so that we can avoid having the fully qualified name in each reference. Maybe, for instance, this number series, if we wanted to access the number series, we could have had to say Microsoft.foundation. Number series management test manual. So it becomes a really long name that is not as valuable compared to now having this. So the beauty is we can be able to use the same name. Like if you have an object name fixed asset, you can reuse it in your you can create another table known as fixed asset in your module, but that is not really practical because we already have something like fixed asset. It will make sense in maybe reports, maybe report names. At times it's so hard to get a unique report name compared to Microsoft, and you keep adding prefixes or suffixes. A report name and maybe a code unit name that you'd like that is similar to the one that Microsoft has. So that's it for these namespaces in AL programming. So what do you think about the namespaces? What if you have used namespaces in C#? Okay, I've used them in C#. In C# they come in by default, and I didn't really have to think so much about it. Let me know what you think about namespaces. How will you use them? What are the best ways that we can try and apply namespaces in AL programming? So that's it for this video. I'll see you in it will be day 22 of 30 days of AL programming. See you there.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so that you don't miss the next one.